We really appreciate you coming and spending the evening with us for our amazing uh, two-part college university panel event. And this is part two, and it's brought to you by the Canadian Multicultural Lead Organization for Mentoring and Training. Today is Thursday, September 30th, 2021, and our event will run from 6:30 until 8 p.m. So I think some of you had attended our first event, so we really appreciate you coming to our second event. And as with all of our events, this meeting is being recorded. We will be recording our events so you have a chance to watch them afterwards on our YouTube channel. I know this will be chock full of information, so we're happy that you can access it afterwards. Before we begin, I'm going to read to you our land acknowledgement. As treaties people on Turtle Island, we are obligated to uphold treaties made from a long time ago. Where I am situated, I would like to acknowledge the traditional territories of the Mississauga of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. I would also like to thank the First Peoples for the ongoing teaching of how we are to learn on the land and from the land in partnership with each other, the animals, and the plants. Okay. Now we will begin. But first, I'll outline the agenda for this evening. We will go over the ground rules and housekeeping norms. I'll tell you more about the lead org. You'll meet the facilitators, myself and my colleague Olamide, who will be joining us a little later on. We'll talk about the vision and purpose of the event, and we'll talk about what we all came here for. Tips and tricks for you to prepare for the world of post-secondary school with our amazing panelists. Afterwards, we will let you know about our post-event survey, upcoming events, and how you can follow us on social media. Okay, ground rules for this event is to please be respectful, be authentic. This is a place where you can have your questions answered about what you'd like to know about post-secondary school. We made this event especially for high school students, so please don't be afraid to ask questions. Be open to learning, be present. We have an hour and a half together, so I just ask everyone, for the sake of your own learning and respect to all the panelists who took time out today, to be present and engaged and be helpful. There will be a chance for us to, connect in the chat, share some tips about post-secondary school, and take action. So this will be a very interactive event. We will be using Slido, and I'll explain that in a moment. And of course, with Zoom, please keep yourself muted as the speakers are speaking. If you'd like to join us on camera, we welcome you to do so that we could have a more interactive experience. All right, and I'm proud to introduce to you the lead organization. We actually have in attendance our two of our directors, including one of our main directors and creator, Wendy Beckles. Hello, Wendy. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. And we also have Astrid Brady. Hi, Wendy.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Greetings to everyone who's joining us today. I'm glad I could join you too. Yep.
We're glad you could go and join as well, Wendy. All right.
Thanks.
And it's my honor to speak about this amazing organization that Wendy and a few other women created many years ago. So the Canadian Multicultural Lead Organization for Mentoring and Training is a registered charity. Our aim is to help youth and adults turn challenges into opportunities through empowering them to build key skills that are founded on 4 principles: leadership, empowerment, achievement, and determination. Since inception in 2007, the LEAD program has provided one-on-one mentorship to over 300 students across the Greater Toronto Area. And during these times of pandemic, we continue to provide amazing career development and personal development events to youth and adults all across our city of Toronto and the greater areas. Our mission is to give individuals from youth to seniors the support to develop strategies and tools to create their own success stories. And we're so happy to have our amazing volunteer panelists with us today to share that. Hey, so you might be wondering about who we are. So as I mentioned, my colleague Olamide would join us on the call shortly. I just want to quickly grab something, a little show and tell. All right. So today I am a program coordinator at the LEAD organization, as well as a career development practitioner by profession, but it wasn't always that way. This is probably my fourth career, but like many of you, it started with high school and post-secondary school. So I just wanted to bring up my graduation photo. This is me in 2012. My graduation photo from the University of Toronto, St. George campus. You can see I had short hair back then, grew long because of the pandemic. So the reason why my colleague and I, as well as the directors, created this event this evening is to help young people, especially high school students, get the information that they need and what we wish we had to succeed in post-secondary school. I remember when I was a post-secondary school student, I didn't have a lot of guidance, to help me navigate through the process, like to make the most of my schooling, to manage my time well. And I was completely blown by the panelists in our first event, and I'm sure the panelists today will also deliver. So I especially love helping young people and youth, young adults and young professionals, especially help them develop their career confidence so that they could go forward into careers that they love. And my amazing colleague Olamide is a recent grad of McMaster University, and she is very well versed working with youth and helping them through periods of transition. So thanks so much for being with us tonight. Okay, and now the vision and purpose of the event. We created it, as mentioned, to provide high school students who are currently exploring various post-secondary school options, incoming college students who want to learn more about, and to help incoming college students who want to learn more about mastering their college experience. All right, and tonight the panelists will share their various experiences as undergraduate students, ranging from academia, athletics, campus life, extracurricular activities, to community building. As mentioned, we are going to be using Slido this evening. So if you could all log on to slido.com and enter the code #panel2 in all capitals, you will reach our Slido channel. This is how we are going to be conducting our Q&A. So as questions come up, please enter it into the Slido so we are able to get to them during our panel event. And my colleague and I will be monitoring the channel to see your questions. Okay, so slido.com, #panel2. All right, now for the big event, the panel. I'd love to know about the panelists. I'm sure you would too. All right, so we have an amazing group of young people here today, and I would love to have them introduce themselves. I am just going to ask the panelists if you could change your name, put your preferred pronoun, and the school that you go to, and the year of study in your Zoom name. If you could rename yourself, that will help us differentiate between the panelists and the participants. Thank you very much. I'm also going to name myself. That way you can see that I'm with the LEAD org. Wonderful. Okay, so I am going to start off with the person closest to the left side. All right, so if I could call upon, sorry, can you please remind me how to pronounce your name? A-N-U?
It's Anu.
Anu, wonderful. Thanks so much, Anu. Okay, let's start with Anu for introductions. Please tell us your name, school and program, year of study, your career aspirations, and one thing you learned about yourself while going to university or college.
All right. So, hi, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Anu. I'm currently a student at McMaster University. I'm in the Health Sciences program, specializing in child health, and I'm in my third year, so almost done. My career aspirations, I hope to become a doctor. So, I'm going to be applying to medical school next year. We'll see how that goes. And one thing I learned about myself during university is that it's very important to get rest. So now I have a rule that I stop doing work at 11:30 p.m. to ensure that I get enough hours of sleep. Because in high school, I used to stay up to like 3 a.m. doing work. I'd have to wake up at like 6 the next morning. It was not a good habit to cultivate. So in university, I just changed my ways, and I find that I feel a lot more energized and I'm a lot more productive when I get a lot of rest. So that's one thing I learned about myself.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, Anu. I love that self-care tip. That's all this information is super relevant for me now as a working young professional. So really glad that you learned that earlier on. That's stuff I wish I knew. I was very horrible as with my time management while I was in post-secondary school. Okay, next we have Molly.
Oh, sorry, I am unmuted. Hi, my name is Molly Farquhar. I've got a weird educational background. I was at U of T for Book and Media Studies, and then I actually transferred to George Brown to do event management. And I also have a post-grad certificate in social media marketing from Conestoga, and I'm currently at Seneca getting a degree in therapeutic recreation. So I've been at both university and college. So second year of study at Seneca there. My career aspirations, I want to do programming in long-term care. I love seniors. And a thing I've learned about myself when going to university and college, there was a difference between what I wanted to do with my life and what I was telling myself I wanted to do with my life. And it took a long time. I'm 28 years old. It took a long time for me to figure that out. And it's okay if you still haven't figured it out yet. Just kind of follow your heart and be easy on yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Molly, for sharing that. I, like yourself, also went to a couple of schools. So I also went to U of T, as mentioned. I graduated from there. I also took book and media studies. I had that as one of my minors, and then I changed that.
That was my mister. Yeah, it was a tiny little program too.
Yes,
so
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I took like 2 classes of that, and like I said, it didn't really go to a lot of like guidance counselors during that time. So I really hopped around a lot while I was in school. It took me a little bit longer to finish my undergrad, about 6 years. I studied.
A lot more common than people think. So common.
Yes, very common. And I didn't get into the career I'm in now until I was like 29 going on 30. So it took me
for a lot of people.
Yeah, it took me a long time and came about in a roundabout way. However, I am where I am now, and I'm happy to be here. It took all those experiences to bring me where I am. So no regrets.
Exactly.
There.
I wouldn't change any of it. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear. Thanks so much for sharing your story, because there may be some of you who maybe you're not in high school, maybe you're a little bit older, and you're like, oh, well, my peers are finding their path. I don't know what I want to do yet. So it's totally possible, and okay, it's all a process of self-discovery. If it takes you a little longer, you will eventually lead to where you need to be. Awesome. And next we have, could you please tell us how to pronounce your name correctly?
Zinwa.
Azinwa. Thank you so much, Azinwa.
And so I'm using my phone, so because my computer audio is being weird. I went to McMaster for nursing. I just finished this year. So I did my NCLEX in July. So I'm now a nurse. My career aspiration would be to really explore nursing as a field. I'm really interested in sexual health for young women. So that's kind of where I see myself in the future. one thing I've learned about myself while going to university and college was that in university, I didn't really explore enough of like things outside of school. Like, for example, like clubs and events. I feel like I kind of like boxed myself into just going to class and like attending lectures, and I didn't even take advantage of the network I could have built as a student. As time went on in my final year, I did step up to that plate and actually began to explore more roles, and it benefited me very, very well. So I always say, like, any advice I give anyone would be start earlier than later, because there could be a lot more I could have gained if I started it a lot earlier. Because you'll never be in uni like that again. So it's good to just take advantage of it when you can.
Thank you so much, Azinwa, for sharing. I really like what you said about, wish you had gotten more involved in extracurriculars while in university. I didn't do that until maybe my third year, and I'm really glad I did. But however, I wish I immersed myself more in campus life a lot earlier because, like you said, you're only in university once. I think I had a mentality when I was younger that, I have all the time in the world, but university, college, it is a kind of like a once in a lifetime experience. So it's important to make the most of it while you're there, even though the days feel long, the years do fly by. Next thing you know, you'll be off to university and graduated. So make the most of it. Thank you so much for sharing. And last but not least, we have Simra. Welcome, Simra.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me, even though I'm a little bit late. Super excited to be here tonight. So my name is Simra. If you want an easier way to remember it, I always joke that it's pronounced like Simba from Lion King. Instead of a B, it's with an R. So now you can be like, the Lion King panelist. I graduated from Ryerson's business program, the Ted Rogers School of Management, specifically in economics, this past December. So in 2020, technically 2021 spring, because you can't graduate in 2020. And I currently work full-time at Shopify in an account executive role. I'm moving into that role tomorrow because I just got a promotion. And one thing I learned about myself while going to university and college or university in my case, is I learned how to not burn out. So something I think in university, it's very easy to burn out, right? Like you're going to classes, especially if you're commuting. Like I live in Mississauga, but I went to school in like downtown Toronto. I was commuting, I was involved on campus, and I was like, I was looking for co-op term jobs because I did co-op all throughout undergrad. And I would like be on 4 hours of sleep. I wouldn't eat properly. I wouldn't exercise. And after a certain point, like it just took a toll on my health. And so one thing I learned about myself is like how to not burn out. I think I'm much better at it now, but I'm still definitely not perfect, especially being in sales and in a client-facing role. But yeah, that's a little bit about me for tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Simra, for being here. We're excited to have you, and congratulations on your promotion. That's great news. And we're super excited to hear from everyone on the panel about their career journeys. Hey, Olamide, thanks so much for coming on screen, being here. Alrighty, so let's move forward with our panel questions. So the first question is kind of, jumps off from where we just, the questions we just asked. But let's expand it further because honestly, university college is such a huge time of growth and development. Some of us are going away from home for the first time in our lives, or like myself, I also commuted. So I was going downtown into the big city to go to school. And it was a really big deal. So that also made room for lots of ups and downs. I would love to know from the panelists, what would you tell your younger self? And is there anything you know now that you wish you knew then? And let's use the emojis for when you want to answer. So you can use the little raise hand function and we will get to you. So whoever would like to contribute. Okay, so I'm going to go Molly and then Anu. Molly.
What I would tell my younger self would be to go to career counseling. I didn't think I needed it because I thought I knew what I wanted to do. But with career counseling, they can analyze kind of your personality type and have you consider roles that you may not have thought of before, or suggest careers that you've never heard of. So I'm in like a career path that's really not well known. So I probably would have heard about it a lot sooner, which would have been nice. If there is anything I know now that I wish I knew then, is that in your 20s, you're actually still developing. That being said, I didn't know that I had a disability. I was only diagnosed with narcolepsy next year. Had I known that I had narcolepsy, I would have been a lot easier on myself throughout university and would have been able to get accommodations. So just pay attention to your health. And, you know, if you think anything is wrong, see a doctor, and they may be able to help you out.
Wonderful. Thank you, Molly, for sharing that. I really appreciate you sharing that personal side. And the fact that, yeah, we are still growing in our 20s. I read a book when I was 25 that really kind of kicked my butt into gear. It's called The Defining Decade. And in it, Dr. Meg Jay, who is the author, talks about, you know, why the 20s is such a defining decade, such an important time. Sometimes we have those adages like, oh, you know, 30s are the new 20s, you know, you're still young, la-di-da. However, it's such an important time of our lives, and it's important to make the most of it. So really happy all of the audience members who may be in high school going into post-secondary could be here. This is the advice that I wish I had. Wonderful. Okay, we're going to move on to Anu.
Yeah, I would say in high school, I was a very like high stress student all the time. I was very worried about grades. I was the type of student who cried over like 95%, which is absolutely ridiculous. And then I got to university in my chemistry course and I got like my first 60. And I was like devastated. I was like, this has never happened before. And I kind of like used that grade to define myself. Like, oh, am I stupid? Like, that's the kind of thing I was saying to myself. And then as I went through the course, that grade ended up being dropped anyway. So it didn't even matter at the end. So that was just a reminder to me that grades, first of all, aren't everything. You can do well without getting like perfect marks in every course. Like, so just be easy on yourself, go easy on yourself, kind of like Molly said. Do the best you can, study as hard as you can, whatever result you get, don't let your grades define you essentially. Because I was doing a lot of that in high school. I was like, oh, if I get below a 90, like I'm not capable, you know, and that's not a good mentality to have. And it kind of takes away the fun part of learning because you're just so focused on the number rather than like actually learning the content because you enjoy it. So I found that when I shifted my mindset in university, it just made everything a lot more easier. I was having more fun in my classes and I was still getting the results that I wanted. So that's definitely what I would tell my younger self. Like, I can't even tell you guys how many times I'd be arguing with teachers for like 30 minutes trying to get like 1% more on my test. It was ridiculous. I'm really embarrassed, but that's just how I was at the time. I'm not like that anymore. So if this resonates with any of you, just know like, yeah, I'm not going to say grades aren't important, but just work your hardest and, you know, be content with what you get, knowing that you did your best.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing the amazing growth that you've had from being, sounds like super hard on yourself perfectionist to just like, you know, embracing the fact that you can learn and have fun and do well in school. You don't have to be so hard on yourself. And that's probably what helped you to do well and have an enjoyable experience, is letting go a little bit. Wonderful. Okay, we're going to go to Azinma next.
Hi. So for me, one thing I would tell my younger self is that I am intelligent. I feel like growing up with a stutter and being an immigrant and all these things, I kind of just thought I was just like someone, like I felt like people, like the people who were just smart, and that was it. Like I was just the other. And I found that it actually affects how you move through life. You begin to perform way under your actual capacity when you don't actually affirm yourself. And it's something that I find affects me now because there are certain things that I just feel like I am not capable of doing. And then I feel like I came to this like conclusion when I see people who I'm like, not that they are not smart or they're not like bright people, but I'm like, if this person can do this, I can too. And I found that like what was different between me and that person is that that person walked into a room with all the confidence. And because they were so confident in themselves, they began to actually enact and perform in that role. And I'm like, this is something that I should have been doing. So I honestly do say, like, telling yourself that you're intelligent and you are capable of doing anything you can do, even though it seems like far-fetched, actually works, because you begin to move in that realm and in that role, as opposed to accepting that you're subpar. Because when you do that, you actually begin to perform subpar. You shy away from roles, from opportunities, because you believe that you are just not that person that can perform that. So right now in my life, I try to, like, no matter what, I'm like, I can do that. I'll do it. I can do it. Obviously, within reason, like, don't stress yourself out, but basically just having that mentality that you're capable of doing basically anything and walking in with the confidence of a middle-aged white man. I keep saying it. Have that confidence. Trust me. You need it. And you begin to perform in that realm. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Azinra. I love that last piece too.
It
Yeah.
works.
Okay, there you go. It's like when we start acting like it, we just automatically start to behave in that way. You know, like the heart goes first and the mind follows, right? So sometimes, like the saying and affirming it to ourselves, it starts to come true after that. Amazing. Thank you so much for that piece of guidance and advice. I felt like I was getting mentored too. And Simra, we'd love to hear from you about what you tell your younger self.
Oh my God, what did I tell my younger self is probably the better question. I think, you know, the one thing I would tell my younger self is to not be afraid of failure. I think similar to the other panelists on here, you know, I was really obsessed with like achievement. You know, I was like president in high school. I was like president of my debate club. I was into astronomy club. I had done a TEDx speech. And if I wasn't doing it all, and if I wasn't getting, and even more than that, getting validation from my peers or my mentors or my teachers, and then later on in university, my employers and my professors, I would feel really crap about myself. Like I'd feel like I wasn't doing a good job. My best friend jokes that I'm like a golden retriever, right? So for anyone that doesn't know, golden retriever is this dog breed, very extroverted, very loving, you know, and he says like, Simra, you're like a human golden retriever. And he can tell when I'm down. And so his running joke is he's like, Simra, you're a good doggo, because he knows I really appreciate validation. But, you know, I think the one thing I would tell myself is like, you know, no one else's validation matters as much as my own. Like if I can walk away from a presentation or a homework or a test knowing that I did my best and that I did what I could in that moment, that I was going to be okay and that I didn't need other people's validations. I think it also stemmed, the fact that I really wanted validation stemmed from the fact that I come from like a Pakistani background and I'm a woman, and, you know, a lot of ways in Pakistani culture, for anyone that doesn't know, it's not the most progressive towards women, or it's not the most friendly to women. And for me, I just had this like chip on my shoulder growing up, and that if I wasn't the best, or if I wasn't like a good role model to my nieces and to other women, that I wasn't doing enough. And so that was like the other thing. So that's like what I would tell my younger self. It's like maybe not worry as much as like what other people think, and like to focus on my own validation.
Wow, thank you so much. I think you bottom lined it very well when you said focus less on other people's validation and start to validate yourself, which really ties into what Azinra shared about affirming yourself. There's no amount of validation from others can really fill up the affirmation that we need from ourselves, right? Wow. This panel is on fire, or lit, as you know, the youth younger than me say. All right, now I'm going to hand it over to Alamide to ask our next question.
Thank you, Valerie, and thank you, panelists, for being here. I love how your responses are so much different than the panelists we had last week, but it's all still very comprehensive. Like, it's things we wish we all knew when we were younger. All right, moving on to the next question, more nitty-gritty into the process of undergrad and college university. How did you choose your school and your program? what were some of the things that you had to consider while doing so? And you can use the raise hand function on the reactions to get ready to answer. All right. I'm going to go from the order I can see it. Ezinwa, you can start.
So for me, I chose my program in Covington High School, and I think someone mentioned it earlier, but I utilized like my career office at my high school when I was picking my program. When I first was considering what to do after grade 12, I didn't really have like any particular like passion for any certain area. I more so had like strengths in different subjects. So when it was time to select courses, I went to my guidance counselor and I told them that like I wasn't really sure what way to go. So I would definitely say like using your guidance counselor if you feel like you have a good one that you can approach is really helpful. And they basically like helped me like break down like what areas I was good at like subject wise. And I also had some influence from my healthcare teacher who basically saw in me that she felt like you would fit really well in nursing. And I've always had a passion. Like I'm someone who I love serving. Like I honestly like I do it so easily because I just think like I just do it. I don't know why, but I really enjoy serving people and helping people and being there for people. I find myself to be very selfless. So she was like, yeah, nursing would be a good fit for you. And I really enjoyed like health and health sciences. So that plus talking to my counselor at school was kind of how I ended up in nursing. And now I honestly made the best choice. I can say I really enjoy it. And what's something I had to consider, again, someone else said it, like, I feel like just being okay with the things you're not good at, because I feel like sometimes when you're young, you want to be where your peers are and kind of be good at everything. But I feel like there's a lot of strength and clarity that comes with accepting that I'm not good at that. Like, you're bad at chem, it's fine. Just find something else. So being okay with accepting and being honest with yourself, like don't force it. If you're not good at it, you're probably better at something else. And when you shift your focus from I have to get better at this thing to how can I even get better at this thing I'm already good at, kind of was what helped me. And yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Ezinwa, for answering that. Anu?
Yeah, so as I said, I was a very like high stress child. So I was like thinking about my future when I was like 11. So by the time I was in grade 7, I kind of already knew what school I wanted to go to and like what program I'd like to do. But my experience in high school kind of solidified that. So I had always wanted to go to McMaster. I don't know what my reasoning was at the time. I was so young, but I was just like, oh, McMaster seems like a great school. And then as I started to do research, like I really liked the size of the campus, like the distance from home. So I live like in the GTA. So it's like far enough from home that I can live on campus, but I can also go back when I need to. And then in terms of the program, I knew I really liked science. It was a matter of me choosing between applying to more like life sciences programs and health sciences programs. And for me, what drew me to health sciences is that you're not just learning like the hard science, you're also, it's like a combination of like social sciences and life sciences. So like thinking about like social determinants of health and like more of like the soft skills. So as much as I like being in the lab sometimes, like I kind of wanted something different. And then with my program specifically, the way it's set up, it's not like you just go to lectures and write exams. It's a lot of problem-based learning. So like you're working in groups and you're kind of like guiding your own learning. So I wanted to be challenged in a different way. So I was really hoping to get into the program that I'm currently in, just so that I'd have a bit of a different experience than high school. Because as I said before, in high school, I was like hyper fixated on grades. Like I would just like memorize, write everything down and then forget about it later. But the way my program is set up, like you can't really do that. Like you actually have to understand the content. So that's kind of how I decided. And then things I needed to consider, like I said, distance from home. I also looked at like diversity. So I was comparing McMaster to like other schools in Ontario. And I personally think maybe it's because of the high school I went to, but McMaster is pretty diverse relative to some other schools in Ontario. So I was like drawn to it for that reason as well. And yeah, those were mainly the things I considered. I also didn't want to go to the same university as most of my grade. I think only like 3 people in my graduating class go to McMaster. Like everyone else goes to Western and Queens. So I was like, I am not going to those schools, because I knew if I did, I would probably just like stick with my friends. And I really wanted to force myself to like meet new people, people that I probably would never have met before. So yeah, that was kind of my decision-making process.
Perfect. Thank you, Anu, for responding. I actually did have a follow-up question to that, and it's also an audience question, because I know with the LTI program, you had to do a supplementary application. One of the audience member wants to know, could you give tips for the supplementary applications?
Yeah, so I would say, obviously the questions are very like weird. I remember like there was one year, one of the supplementary questions was literally just like, why? Like that was the question, that was it, no context. So just try to use your creativity. Don't try to write what you think they want you to say. Like be yourself as much as possible. And really take your time to craft your answers. I remember I read the questions like when they first came out in September, and I reflected on them like on the bus ride home from school or when I had breaks, like until basically December. So I was just like, whenever I had an idea, I would just like write it in a doc. So I spent a lot of time reflecting on my answer before I started writing it. I didn't want to rush it. I don't think I started writing my application until December. So I like reflected on it for like 4 months just so I could come up with what I thought represented me best, because that's what they want to know. They want to know how you are, how you learn. So just keep that in mind as you're writing the application. Be yourself and don't, because a lot of people think there's like a formula to get into the program, but there really isn't. Like, I don't even know how I got in. All I can say is I just tried to show them my personality, who I am, like my strengths, my weaknesses. So yeah, those are my tips. Just, and I know like people don't like hearing that, like, oh, just be yourself, but that's honestly like all I can really say. And yeah, make sure your answer is like easy to read. Have someone else read it over for you to see if it makes sense, because sometimes when you write something down, like it makes sense to you, but when someone else reads it, because you have to keep in mind they're reading like a lot of these applications, so they don't want to have to like try and pick apart what you're saying. Like make sure it's very clear and to the point. And yeah, if you want like any other tips, I don't mind if they give you my email, because yeah, I'm open to talking about this more, because I know it's a very scary process. I did not know anyone in my program when I applied, which just made it even more stressful. So I understand how it feels. So you guys can reach out to me if you need any tips.
Perfect. Thank you, Anu. I agree with being creative. For the why question, I know someone who was also in the outside program, and she answered it with why not. So she like flipped it on them, and obviously it was interesting enough and she got in. So be creative. They read a lot of applications. If it's the same boring stuff, like chances are, things might not go that well. All right, I'll move on to Molly. So how do you choose your school and program, and what were some of the things you had to consider?
When it came to choosing U of T for like my initial journey into post-secondary school, I thought I wanted to be a broadcast journalist, but I knew I was only 17 and that could change. So what I actually did was I chose my school firstly based off of how many programs they offered, so that I could change my mind and bridge into them. And U of T had a ton of programs. So did Western. I almost went to Western. The other thing that I wanted to consider, was I willing to live in the city that the university was located in? I'm not sure if that's like super obvious or not, but I knew a lot of people from my school really didn't want to live in a big city like Toronto, because I'm from small town Ontario. But I love the city and I wanted that. So I actually fell in love with the city first before I fell in love with U of T as an actual school. When it came to college, a lot of the time you don't really have a choice. You choose what program you want to go into and you hope that there's a college near you that offers it. That's how I chose Seneca and George Brown. But I chose my program as actually for recreational therapy I was working in like events and weddings, and I wasn't feeling a lot of gratification from that. And so I was looking for volunteer positions just as something to do to feel like I could help people. And there was literally a position teaching like seniors how to knit, which is like, oh my gosh, my dream job. Like I love crafts. And it said, report to the recreational therapist. I was like, what is that? And then I looked at what recreational therapy was. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. So the short answer to that is by doing some volunteer work, you can actually kind of explore hands-on what you like and what you're good at. Volunteering is amazing. You get free food and you build your resume. It's amazing. And you can actually explore the things that you might be interested in and see if you like them. So, and then the second part of that was the things you have to consider. Yeah, was I willing to live there or commute? And yeah, just any bridging programs or other programs that it might offer if I change my mind later.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Molly, for your in-depth answers. Simra.
Yeah, oh my God, everyone has such like interesting answers. I feel like mine's like really boring. So I did not grow up in Canada. I actually grew up outside of Canada. I grew up in the Middle East. And so I was technically an international student, but I'm born Canadian, so I don't count as an international student. And so when I was choosing in my school and program, it was a couple of things. So one, I went to business school, but I actually didn't want to be a business major. I come from like I mentioned earlier, I come from a South Asian family where you have like 3 or 4 career options, like lawyer, doctor, engineer, accountant. And so I wasn't on the lawyer path. And I definitely didn't want to be a doctor engineer because my math skills sucked. But my dad was like, well, like you're good at business, like you just have the mind for business. Like, why don't you do that? But I still always had journalism in the back of my mind. And so I'd applied to all these business schools, but like I wasn't, and I got accepted into quite a few, but like I wasn't fully set on business. And so I went to Ryerson, and the reason why is because Ryerson has an exceptional journalism program. And because in the agreement I came into my dad was, you know, if I didn't like business school after the first year, I could switch into journalism. And so that was what it came down to. And so like flip side, I ended up loving business school. I think especially Ryerson's business school, it didn't felt like I had to be put into a bucket. I always joke that like people, when you think of people that go to business school, you always think of like people in suits and that are kind of like a-holes and very like businessy, if you know what I mean. I joke all the time. I was like, I don't want to become that. And I feel like in the end, I did end up becoming that, minus the asshole part, because I don't think I'm an asshole. And so that's why I ended up choosing my school and program. I think the other thing was my family really wanted me to live in Toronto. They wanted me to live close to like extended family and have that support network. So that was another reason I chose Ryerson. I actually never visited the Ryerson campus like prior to moving back to Canada. So I had like just looked up pictures up online. But I just loved it. Like I loved going to school in the city. I think like in hindsight, I'm so happy I didn't go to school at like Western and Queens. Like it was like a very like, I don't think I would have enjoyed like a student town personally. Maybe now, but definitely like not 5 years ago. I think the things I had to like consider were like obviously like program, like the backup option if in case I didn't like business school. The one thing I thought was really cool in like Ryerson's business program was like you had specializations. So, you know, you could like double major, you could double minor, like you could do like, you can major in accounting and finance, or you can major in like marketing and economics. Like there were a lot of optionalities. The other thing that I really loved about my program that I think is like really cool, and I think everyone should consider it regardless if you choose business as a major or not, is it had co-op. So a lot of people say, like you'll hear people talk about co-op and work experience and how it's so important for getting a job after school. But I actually think like co-op is so much more than that. I think it's more important because, you know, you think you might want to go to a certain career path. Like maybe you think you want to be an accountant or a consultant, or you want to work for like a big bank. And then you actually do co-op actually allows you to like try out different career paths during like a 1.5 year span or a 2-year span. And it actually allows you to kind of like sample from the buffet a little bit and decide for you if like it's actually like worth your time or not. And if it's actually a career you want to pursue after graduation, because, you know, you can do like 5 co-op terms at 5 different companies over the span of a year and no employer will say anything. But when you graduate, and if you were to go to like 5 companies within a year, that's a red flag for a lot of employers. And so I really think like co-op is like the most underrated and thing ever. Like not a lot of people talk about it, or they talk about it for the wrong reasons. Like, yes, getting a job after graduation is important, but what's even more important is that you take the time in university to truly understand like what it is you want to do, because pivoting is okay, but it is harder after you graduate. So that's like a little bit about like why I chose my school and program and what were some of the things I had to consider.
Thank you, Simra. I like how all your answers speak about what's most important to you. For everyone, it's different. So you need to write down what your needs are, or you know you need to take into consideration before picking a school. All right. The next question is, Valerie. So after this question, we're going to move on to the audience questions. So many of you spoke about your program. So what do you like best and least about your school and your program? And as usual, please use the raise hand function to answer.
I don't have a raise hand function, so is it okay if I just take this?
Yes, you can take it.
Sorry, I keep reacting with like the crying, laughing emoji, and I feel like some of the panelists and attendees are going to be like, "Oh man, why does someone keep crying and laughing? Like, what's so funny about people's answers?" So I just graduated, so I think like one of the things I loved best, I kind of touched on this in my previous answer. I loved like the optionality I had in my program. Like I was not put into a specific bucket. So for context for everyone, most business programs in Canada, so for instance, IB School of Business or Queen's Commerce, they expect you after your first 2 years to like specialize and really like double down on what you're doing. So, and they kind of have like 4 or 5 buckets. Like it's either consulting, investment banking, accounting, or like some sort of finance, right? And maybe technology. Now it's becoming more of a thing. And that's really about it. If you're like go into anything else, like it's just not well considered in that program. And it's such a prestigious program, right? And so, the thing I loved about Ryerson was like that wasn't the case. It was encouraged for you to diversify. It was encouraged for you not to specialize and stay inside the box. I had friends that were doing like hospitality and tourism, but they minored in economics, right? And so they're taking econ classes with me. I was an econ major myself, but I had done 2 co-op terms in banking and on a data science team. I'd done like a year at Microsoft and I did another one at Salesforce. So like I really got the most out of everything. I was on Commerce Society, part of the Commerce Society too, which is something that not a lot of econ majors did. I think what I liked least about my program is, and this is a lame one and just really specific to me. So most co-op programs, they like alternate between work and school and work and school. I didn't like, mine was just like finish 30 or a straight year and a half of working full time, like basically doing co-op terms. And I could organize it how I want. I could do like 1 big co-op term for that 16 months. I could do 2 at the same company. But like working full time, and this was like a catch-22, right? It was like really intense to work. Like it was a big change to go from like school all the time or like school and co-op to like just working basically. It taught me a lot about myself. It really pushed me, but it was like very challenging. And I think the other thing is I majored in economics. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm not good at math. Economics, when you take it at the university level and when you get into your advanced courses, it's like a lot of calculus. No one told me that. Absolutely no one told me that. So that was like a little bit of a tough surprise, but like, it's okay. I got through it. I passed. We're graduated. We're working full time. It's good. So that's really my answer.
Thank you. There's also a question actually about co-op on the chat. So if you could just quickly take it. The Talitha is asking, can you take co-op even if it's not for your program?
That's a great question. So it really depends on your school. So I think like you'll know if your school offers it if you look at their admissions website. Some schools do, some schools don't. And I think what's even more important, and it's like dependent on program as well. So if you are part of a program that doesn't have co-op, what you can do instead is you can do internships instead, like throughout the summers. What I've seen my friends do is that they weren't part of co-op, but they took a year off school to basically go do like a year-long internship, and they called it co-op. Right? So that's an alternative as well. I would say like when you're considering like university programs, strongly consider co-op and then dig deeper into like how the program is structured. Because there's some schools, like I know McMaster's Business School, like it does have co-op, but the way their co-op is structured is like you take a year and you have to work at the same company for 16 months. That personally, like I think that's a little bit of cheating. Like that defeats the purpose of co-op and finding out what you want to do. If you have to work at a company for 16 months, you might as well have just graduated early and done that working full time, right? Versus like Ryerson, like I majored in economics, like I had 16 months straight too, but I could structure it however I wanted. So that's like what I would consider. So I'd say speak to like go to the career fairs, whether it's virtual or like these days, and like speak to current students and ask them like, hey, like what's the co-op structure like? And just dive deeper into that. If your school does offer it, and if it doesn't, like you can always get an internship during the summers. You might have to work a little bit harder because it's not arranged by your school, but that's really about it.
Thank you, Simra. Izinwa?
Oh, one thing I liked about my program was I feel like they, just with like our clinical placements or replace, they kind of they did their best to kind of ensure all like students got a little bit of everything. That way you can try different areas and see kind of what you like. That was good. One thing I liked least about my program was I found there was not much diversity, and I don't feel like the school kind of did a lot to ensure that there was diversity in the program. So, yeah.
Thank you, Izinwa. Anu?
Okay, so I would say what I like best about my program is that it's taught me a lot of soft skills. So aside from the content, I've learned things that will be applicable in the workforce. So for context, I hated working in groups in high school. Like whenever my teacher would say this is a group assignment, I would just want to like crawl into a hole and die. Like I did not like working in groups. And then I got to my program and like literally all of our assignments are group assignments. I was having like up to 20 hours of group meetings every week. And it was definitely a change, but the way my program is structured, it's like we have group evaluation. So we're constantly evaluating ourselves and how we work in groups, evaluating others. And through doing this, I kind of was able to learn like what works and what doesn't when working in groups, which has just made my experience like a lot better. Now I'm not like grunting when I hear I have another group assignment. And this is something that's important in the workforce because you're gonna have to work with other people. So I feel like I just learned a lot of those soft skills, time management, goal setting, all that stuff. Like my program definitely cultivates like a space whereby like they constantly want you to be evaluating yourself and like, you know, tracking your goals, and you have to be accountable to those goals. So I would have meetings with my professors. We'd have to make like a learning contract with our goals for the year and like show evidence that we're working towards those goals. So it just helped me with a lot of like those soft skills, reflection, all of that, things that I don't think I really had the chance to work on much in high school. And in terms of what I like least about my program, when you're in a small program and like everyone's working towards the same goal, because like everybody wants to go to medical school, it can get a bit competitive, you know, and like I always have to remind myself not to compare myself to others, because some people, they'll be doing like research at Oxford University with like the top scientists in the world, and you just have to remind yourself like you don't need to be doing all that. Like focus on your own path. I'm not going to say it's easy, but like it's important. So I would say that's what I like least about my program. It's just there are like undertones of competitiveness. Everyone likes to act like, oh no, I'm not looking at what you're doing, but everyone is. So that's one thing that I'm still getting used to. But overall, I've enjoyed my experience.
Thank you, Anu. I did go to McMaster, and I can say that there is a stereotype to outside students. So I agree with you. Molly?
So I went to a few schools. So quickly, like with U of T, what I loved about it was the size of the school. It's a massive university. So because of that, there was a huge array of like clubs that you could join, tons of programs, tons of places to study, and little like places in the campus that you never run out of places to explore. But my least favorite thing about U of T was the size. You know, you do start to kind of feel like just a number. You have to find your own community within the campus. I actually joined a sorority, which I recommend for many women. It was amazing, and I was able to find friends that way and get a community that way. So that's what I had to do while at U of T. At college, so like at Seneca, for example, my favorite thing about college is that it's hands-on, and the professors that they have aren't hired because they're academics, they're hired because they're professionals in that field, if that makes sense. So they're not just researchers, they're like people who have actually worked as nurses or people who have actually worked as wedding planners. And so you really learn a lot from them, and it's amazing. And then my favorite thing about my program itself, recreational therapy, is that it's always kind of been in existence, but it's only just now within the past 10 years being recognized as a career, like doing programming in institutionalized settings, basically. So because of that, all the new research coming out about it is really exciting, and it's really fun to kind of advocate for this profession and spread awareness about it so that more people know that it exists.
Awesome. Thank you, Molly, for your answer. I also went to University of Toronto, so I can definitely attest to the feeling that it is a massive campus with a lot of people coming in and out, many of whom are also commuters like myself. So yeah, after a while, you kind of do feel like a number, but I was able to also find community on campus when I got involved in the school as well. And I've also gone to college. Many years after I finished my BA at U of T, I went to George Brown College to study what I'm doing now, career development. And I can attest to that. Most of the instructors are actually working in the field with lots of experience. So it's a pretty different experience than university, which is very academic focused. And then college is a lot more hands-on. Like I feel like everything that I learned while I was in college, I basically used day to day. Whereas in academia, it was I'm not gonna knock it. I'm really glad that I did do university because it informed what I do now. Like my major was women and gender studies. I ended up switching from English lit to women and gender studies, history and Canadian studies, and took equity studies. So it really informed what I'm doing now, working with a very diverse population. But it was the skills that I learned in that specialty in college that allowed me to do what I'm doing now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Now we're going to go on to the questions we have in our Slido. Thank you everyone for being so active and submitting your many questions. I'm going to hand it over to Lamide to read our Slido question.
All right, thank you, Valerie. So this is for any panelist that chooses to answer. The first question says, do you have tips for becoming better at actually following your schedule and plans for the day?
I can take this one.
Yes.
So time blocking, big on tap. And then, so time blocking is basically this practice where, and I'm like happy to share my calendar, but my calendar is a little bit problematic. So maybe not the best example, but time blocking where like I set up time to do certain things in the day. So I'll give you an example. Like I know every day from like 12 to 1, that's like my lunch hour, right? Like that's what I'm going to eat. That's what I'm going to do. Like any personal errands that I have. And then maybe from like 4 to 5, that's when I'm going to reply to like customer emails. Or if in undergrad, if I had lectures from like 3 to 6, I knew that between 2 to 3, I might've been commuting, just as an example. And so during that time, I maybe would have done my readings, or I maybe would have done like something else. So I think like when it comes to like following your schedule, I think it's like 2 things. One is like create a work back plan. So for me, like, and I do this as an adult now, and I've just graduated school. So like my new goal right now is to try and sleep by like 10 p.m. So if I know I have to sleep by 10 p.m., I kind of like work backwards. I'm like, okay, what do I need to be doing from 9 to 10? What do I need to be doing from 8 to 9? What do I need to be doing from 7 to 8? Like, and I work backwards. So that's what I do. And I try to like hit milestones. I also make like a little to-do list. I'm like, okay, every night, like, here's what I need to do in order to get to bed. So I can check off things. Like, for instance, like right now I need to remove my makeup before I get to bed. I wear glasses. Right now I'm wearing contact lenses. So I need to remove my contact lenses. So that's like, I kind of create like a picture, and I kind of create this routine around it. The other thing is like an accountability buddy. Like I really love, like, it could be a friend, it could be your sister or your mom or your brother, but I love like having an accountability, or like your boyfriend or your girlfriend. I love like having an accountability partner who keeps you attached to your goals and is like, yeah, like hey Sims, like you need to be doing like XYZ by this time. So that really helped. So for instance, like working out, I actually do like working out now, but I didn't always like to work out. So I would go to like workout classes, because if I knew that I paid for the class and I had to like show up, then I would be there. And I oftentimes go with friends, because if I committed with friends, then like I would definitely show up. So that's what I did. And like I would also recommend color coding your calendar. Try and keep your color code simple. So now in my job, I work in technology sales at Shopify. I color code my calendar based on like what goals. So like green is for like demos and like closing calls with clients. You know, yellows for things that aren't really like, are kind of like things I need to do and prep for those calls, and reds are like internal meetings. And that gives me like a bird's eye view of like what I need to be doing more in my week in order to hit my goals. So if you're in university, for instance, if you're studying, you know, that might be the green for you because you want to be an A+ Dean's List student. And your yellow may be like your me time, just as an example, like, or you're commuting. Your blue, maybe your classes. So you might have like a 3 to 4 color coded calendar as opposed to mine. So those are like all of my tips. I hope that was helpful. I kind of word vomited there.
I'm 100% sure it was helpful. Thank you. Molly, you have your hand raised up.
Yes, I do. Those are all like super good points. Some of the things like the work back, like I do that and I didn't know there was a word for that. Like I didn't realize that was something I did too. Those are amazing points. Another thing that I do, I actually, for every class, you'll get something called a syllabus, which is like, this is what the class is. These are all the due dates, and this is how everything's graded. I actually amalgamate all my syllabi into one table of due dates. So I brought it up on my iPad here. Oh no, you probably can't see it. So this is for every week. I list every class. And then I say, this is what the reading is. This is the lecture topic. This is the assignment due that week. And that way for each week, I can be like, hey, what's going on this week? So I'm not switching between syllabi and getting really overwhelmed. Another thing that I do, just a second, I had it here. Sorry, I was taking notes as Simmer was talking, is something called the Eisenhower matrix. I learned this from my psychiatrist, actually. It's really hard to explain, just Google it. It's basically a great way to write a to-do list where you write your tasks as urgent and important, urgent but not important, not important but urgent, and not urgent and not important. And it's a great way to just prioritize everything. Yeah, the Eisenhower matrix, it's amazing.
Yes, thank you, Molly. I was trying to find a link for the Eisenhower matrix to send in case someone wanted to open it up to see what it looked like. But yeah, that's very good information. Thank you. So we're going to move on to the next audience question due to time. And the next question is, do you need to take notes in class for a lecture or practical class? And if you don't, are there any ways to refer to important lessons or terms? So 2 more panelists can take this one. I'll put this on the chat as well.
I can just answer. I know, like, at least for my program, all of the lectures were like recorded, or yeah, they were recorded. So, for example, if you're not able to take notes in class because you can't keep up, or you just want to like listen and grasp what the lecturer is saying, you could always go back later and like listen to it. The only thing about that is kind of like if you leave it all to the end, then you have like all the lectures to like listen to. So what I recommend, like in my first year, I didn't really like take notes in class just because I didn't really have like a groove of how well to take notes. So I kind of just like banked on going back to listen to the lectures. But then when exam came, I found that I have all these lectures to listen to, so that didn't work out. So technically, definitely in class, I would definitely say, if you do choose to not take notes, I would say that day, like when your lecture gets like dropped on whatever software your school uses, go back and listen to the lecture that day or at least that week. Don't kind of leave it up to the end. And yeah, that's kind of what I did eventually as I progressed in my program.
Thank you, Ezenwa. Molly, you have your hands up. Is this for the same question or for the last question?
Oh, it's the same question, but only if no one else wanted to add anything.
No, you can go ahead.
So usually what happens, from my experience in both college and university, is that professors will usually have a PowerPoint. They'll either upload it before the class or after the class. If they don't, you can request it. And what I do is I actually go in and I save the PowerPoint on my computer or my iPad before the class. And I'll either like write in the PowerPoint's note space or directly on the PowerPoint with my pen, the notes. So I'm just, instead of rewriting everything that's on the PowerPoint, I'm just adding on to it. And if you're not taking notes in class, just as long as you take them like right after, I actually write down all my notes after my class. Because otherwise, like 2 weeks later, you're not even going to remember what that class was about. So do it on the same day. I skim the PowerPoint ahead of time if it's already uploaded. And if you do have an iPad and an Apple Pencil, I know not everyone does, but if you do, I recommend an app called GoodNotes, where I upload my PowerPoints and I can like write on them with my pen, which is, to me, has been the best way for me to study and to take notes. You'll get the hang of it.
Thank you, Molly. And I see Dr. Daniel sent something on the chat. I'm going to try and read it out loud. And everyone needs to know their personal learning style: kinesthetic, visual, auditory, or read/write. Taking notes if you're an auditory learner won't be much help. Auditory learners need to record the oral lecture and listen to it to study. Completely agree. Thank you, Dr. Daniel. Would another panelist like to take on this question? So this is the same question with how do you take notes, how to study?
I guess I can add one more thing. As good as it is to take notes during your lectures, like make sure you're actually reading the notes afterwards. It seems like self-explanatory, but like I know sometimes, I don't know, for me, I'd like take really detailed notes like in my lecture, I'd write on the slides, but then like I wouldn't do anything with it after. So I think this also relates to what Dr. Daniel said, like you need to find what works best for you. Some people, they learn best by like writing things down over and over again. For me, flashcards work best. So I use Anki. It's like spaced repetition. So like I learn the stuff over time. So yeah, like it's good to take notes, of course, but just make sure you're actually reviewing your notes, like, and don't just review your notes like a couple days before your test. Like review them like when you have time, but you don't want to just like cram. So yeah, there's like the spaced repetition method. You can like search it up. That's how like things get stored in like your long-term memory. To like something about the forgetting curve. I don't know the details, but just make sure that you're not doing everything at the last minute is my point. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Anu, for sharing. And we're going to take another question from the Slido. What are minors and majors, and would it apply to college or university in Ontario?
I can take this
Molly?
one.
Oh, okay.
Molly, do you want to go first? It's totally
cool.
Oh,
sure, yeah. So majors are like your main focus of study, and a minor is like your minor focus of study, if that makes sense. So my major was, if your major is English, you'll find yourself taking more English classes. But then if your minor is history, you'll have to take less of it. But your main focus is English. It's a great way to kind of supplement your education and kind of like find a focus. Some universities actually offer double majors. So instead of saying, oh, I have a degree in English, you have a degree in English and history. But someone could probably add on to that too, if they have something to add or know more about that process. and it is also in Ontario.
Yeah. There's also specialists as well. So you could specialize in a topic. We're mostly taking all classes within that. There's usually like a key amount of courses you have to take for majors and minors as well. Simra?
Honestly, I could not have said it better than Molly. Like she hit the nail on the head. Like major is like your main focus of study is, and minors is like whatever you like, additional classes. I did like I majored in economics and then I minored in finance. So I took like maybe 2 or 3 finance classes to get my minor. Some programs, you know, it's really easy to get a minor. Others, like if your minor has absolutely nothing to do with your major, then it's like a lot harder. You might have to take like 2 or 3 more additional classes, but it's really up to you. If you're interested in a certain area of study, then like, well, why not? But yeah, Molly hit the nail on the head. I could not have done better with that answer.
Thanks so much for your answer. And it applies, I would say, to university and not college, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's true.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Okay, moving on to our next question. What advice do you have for the first year newbies, like scholarships, activities, study habits, good sleep routine, etc.? So it's a good question for the first years.
I could take it if no one else has raised their hand. Maybe someone has. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Go, and then Anu can go after you.
Okay, I can go?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. I don't have a raised hand function on my Zoom. I'm really sorry. Maybe I haven't updated it. I would say like my advice to first year students is like get involved on campus, especially if you're going to a commuter campus like Ryerson or U of T. Like I think the way I made friends, I'm also like, to be fair, guys, I'm a very extroverted person. So like I make friends with random strangers. It's probably why I'm in sales, because I have to meet strangers every day. I think like get involved on campus, like find an activity that suits you. So like for in business school, like I was part of the Economic Society and the Commerce Society, but you know, I had so many friends that did like classes outside, like did join clubs out, not having anything to do with business school. So I had friends that were in the rowing club or that did like volleyball. And for them, that was like their way of de-stressing, but like also like, you know, just doing something that looked good. And I think that's like one of my biggest pieces of advice is like get involved on campus. Really like university, it's very easy to get overwhelmed, especially in your first year. You might be like living on your own for the first time, you might be commuting for the first time, and it can be a lot. So I just say like take time to take care of yourself. When it was my first year of undergrad, I probably lost like 5 kgs actually, and it was a lot and I looked like a skeleton. But then I learned how to take care of myself and like slow things down, and I got a handle on things. So those are like my 2 pieces of advice, but like, and don't be so hard on yourself. Like it'll all work out.
Awesome.
Great.
Oh, Valerie, you can go.
Okay.
Oh, it's going to call upon Anu.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I agree. It's very important to take care of yourself. I was like the reverse of Simra. In my first year, I gained a lot of weight because like, I don't know, I was just like getting caught up in like all the work I had to do. So I wasn't making time to like exercise, because in high school, I was really active. I did sports like every term. So it wasn't really something I had to think about. And then I got to university and I was just like sitting around most days. So I had to go out of my way to, you know, like join an intramural team or like go to the gym. So just find what works for you. And in terms of scholarships, if you're in grade 12, like there are so many scholarships for grade 12s, like going into first year. But even when you're in university, like there are so many scholarships that go unclaimed, like, and I'm going to put the names of some databases you can go on to like see what scholarships are available. And like, once you apply for one, most scholarships, like they have the same kind of questions. So you can just like recycle your answers. That's what I've been doing for the past 3 years, and it has yet to fail me. So if like finances are a concern for you, definitely keep an eye out for scholarships, not just outside of school. You'll even find that the school you go to, they'll have like in-course awards, for example. So yeah, just like, it seems like a lot of work, but it really isn't. Once you like get one down, it becomes easier to do the subsequent ones. So that's another big thing. And just be open to meeting new people. I know, like I said before, I went to a school where there weren't a lot of people from my high school, so that I'd be forced to meet new people. So if you're like me and you're like, you kind of like stay in your comfort zone and just like stick with the people that you know, try to branch out, you know. It's good to meet new people from different backgrounds, especially for me. Like I grew up in a neighborhood where it was like all the same people. Like I live in Woodbridge. It's like a bunch of Italians. So then I got to McMaster and I'm like meeting people from like a bunch of different backgrounds, whether it be cultural, religious. So just be open to meeting new people. That's how you get to learn more about the world. So yeah, that'd be my tips to you guys.
Thank you so much for sharing your tips, Anu. And so on to the next question. How are the university or college grades? How are projects, assignments, and exams weighted differently? How can I be prepared to get to class on time? Molly?
It totally depends on the course, and I know that's not really what you want to hear. But for example, I have one course this semester where you have a weekly assignment. Each assignment is worth 5%, and then that's your grade. Whereas I have other classes where you will have like a research paper and then like a midterm, a group presentation, then a final exam. So they will all kind of be weighed differently. But in terms of like getting to class on time, give yourself extra time to get there. It is important you get to class on time. One, because professors really hate people being late. I know professors who have just told people to like leave if they're late, which isn't nice. And also just because you usually miss the most important stuff at the beginning, because that's where they go over like assignments or tips. And so it's really important to kind of get those first couple minutes in. So that's kind of my advice for getting to class early. It is important, and you want a good seat too. You really want a good seat.
Thanks for sharing, Molly. Any of the other panelists like to chime in about the projects and assignments, exams in university before we move on to the next?
I just wanted to add a lot of classes, like at least in university I found, you'd have a participation mark. That's the easiest mark to get in any class. Come to any class with either a question or a point and you'll get that. Sometimes it's worth like 10% of your grade. It's the easiest 10% you'll ever have. So pay attention to that participation mark.
Thanks for sharing that. So keep that in mind. That 10% could make the difference between pass or fail, which brings us to our next question. If you pass a course with a 51% or something, does it really end up mattering in brackets for your degree, going forward with your career, etc.? Okay, we'll go Molly and then Izinwa.
My answer would be that it depends on whether or not you want to study something after your undergrad or your first diploma. So like if you want to apply to like a master's program, then absolutely your grades do matter. They're going to look at your GPA, your grade point average. Or if you just want to say that you graduated with honors. If you aren't, I would say that your marks don't really matter. What matters is that whether or not you're actually learning and actually paying attention. So my mom has a famous saying called 6-0 and go, which means if you're really struggling with a class and it doesn't matter, just get that 6-0, get it over with. Just as long as you're learning, like the grades don't entirely matter.
All right, thank you, Molly. Izinwa?
I definitely agree. Like it's like I would say obviously like grades are important, more so for programs where you're after that degree you have to like further your education into other, like for example med school or law school, stuff like that. Speaking from my perspective in nursing, like your grades don't really matter, except again you want to further your education and get maybe a master's. Those are the grades that they would like want to see. So in a program like mine, the focus is more so like obviously always in every situation always give your best, and if you do give your best you end up getting high grades anyways, most times. But yeah, just like Molly said, just like focus on like actually learning the content. Don't be too focused on like a number on a page. Just make sure you're actually like learning and gaining from the classes. But yeah, that's my little take on it.
Thank you for sharing, Izinwa. And yes, as Molly mentioned, employers don't typically look at transcripts, which brings me to the point that in the real world of work, No one really cares about if you got an F, an A, whichever. They're not hiring you because they're trying to grade you. So back to what we mentioned at the beginning, how, Annie mentioned how wrapped up she was in getting like 1% hired to like make it a 95 or 96. Like when it comes to the real world of work and building your career, employers aren't going to ask for transcripts. They're not going to care. They don't care if you got your master's degree or Harvard. Can you do the work? So that's some perspective to keep in mind as you're going through school, to not get so devastated because, oh, I got a 51%. I got some really crappy marks. Before I changed my majors to something I really liked. And I can confidently say it has not affected my ability to get work and get into a career that I love. So please keep that in mind, especially for those who may be coming from a very academic background that emphasizes academic achievement and work. This is where me as a creative development practitioner, I see a big divide of people going through academia, coming from cultural backgrounds where academia is really driven into them. When you go off into the real world, the employer, yes, okay, yeah, you're educated, but what can you do for a company? That's what they're really going to focus on. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, so on to our next question. I'm going to call upon Olamide.
Thank you. We do have a lot of questions to get through, so we're trying to go through it fast. So thank you all for your patience. So the next question is about clubs. So how are the clubs like in university or college? How many could you apply to, and what were the schedules for them? Molly?
Sorry, I'm really passionate about this. If you go to Western, UOIT, University of Ottawa, Guelph, or U of T, or Ryerson, or York, there's Greek Life, which is a really great way to meet some really powerful and inspiring women. And something like that might take a lot of your time. But other clubs, like I was in clubs where we met maybe once a month, and they don't require a lot from you. Sometimes it's like, oh, we meet once a month and we watch a movie. There are other ones where it's like, oh, you're a journalist on the school newspaper, and it's like having a part-time job. There's no limit to however many clubs that you want to be in, other than the limit you might set for yourself in order to actually manage your time wisely. But clubs are a super important part of the post-secondary experience. I highly, highly recommend enrolling in a bunch of them in your first semester, just to kind of figure out which ones you like. And then that way you can kind of find a community on your campus, which is super important.
Thank you, Molly. I also wanted to add, because I went to McMaster, and the first week of school, we had something called Club Fest. So it was a space where all the clubs at McMaster gathered, and you were able to come in between your class to, ask questions about the club and learn more about it. Many of them have like a general meeting that you can attend, and you can see what the commitment is like. So I don't know about any other school here. Yeah, Valerie said they had it at U of T as well. So look at what your school has, and then from there, determine if you want to get involved with that. All right. We're going to take one more question from the audience. It says, how much daily free, unscheduled, and unoccupied time did you really find yourself having? Did you feel like you had enough free time? Any panelists can take this. Anu?
Yeah, so for me, I felt like in first year, before I joined any clubs, like I had a lot of free time, like between classes. I was actually like, I always tell people I was more stressed in my grade 12 year than I was in my first year of university. That might be like just my experience, but I felt like I had a lot more room to fill in that space with things that I wanted to do. So what your schedule looks like will really depend on what you decide to get involved in. So for me, like I joined a few clubs that had like weekly meetings and things of the sort. I like volunteered outside of school. So like that was another thing I had to put into my schedule. But I would say like generally, I felt like I had enough space to do other things like outside of my classes. which is like the beauty of university. Like, I feel like you have a lot more freedom when it comes to that sort of thing. So yeah, that was my experience.
Thank you, Anu. Molly?
I think it does depend. So like for my program, in my first year, first semester, I was like, oh cool, I only have like 7 hours of class a week. You have to take into account that's just the lecture time. You have to also, when you look at, okay, a course is 2 hours a week, you also have to take into account how many hours a week am I going to be studying for this and actually writing the papers, etc. So when you do look at your schedule, do keep that in mind. This is kind of where time management comes in. You will have free time as long as you manage your time wisely, as long as you don't wait until the end of the semester to study. And you'll also get the hang of how you're going to schedule your time as well. Also, I kind of wanted to touch on finding time like for your family as well. When you're in first year, you're kind of exploring yourself and finding out who you are as an adult. But it's also important to kind of like schedule time to talk to your family. So I make sure I call my mom at least twice a week and FaceTime her. I make sure I visit as often as I can, just because like continuing that bond with your family and showing them how you're growing as a person is really important. And they can be a really great kind of resource mentally, you know, like providing your support, and kind of reaffirming that you're worth it and you are smart and you've gotten this far and everything's going to be okay. I think a lot of people, they go to university and they're like, okay, I'm an adult now, bye. But they don't really realize just how important it is to still, you know, keep your parents as a rock.
Yeah, very, very important. Thank you, Molly. So I just placed the feedback form in the chat. If you could take a minute to fill it out before we wrap up the event, that would be great. I'm going to take one more question. Let me see.
Sorry, okay. Olamide, I just wanted to say something. Okay. I don't need to put on my video. I'll just put on a pretty picture. No, I just wanted to say as well as, and I think, did you take one of my courses? I don't remember. It's been so long.
I didn't know because I wasn't in the core science program. No.
Yeah. So I'm a professor at McMaster. I'm one of the first class of all of my courses, I actually don't teach any scientific material. I spend the entire class talking about how to succeed in whatever year it is, whether it's first, second, or third year. And one of them is, so especially if I'm teaching a first or second year course, I talk about the fact that you will have these, you look at your calendar, you're like, wow, I only have 10 hours of classes or 12 hours of classes. And then like time is the one thing in life you can never regain ever. It's like once it's gone, it's gone. It's not like money where you can make more. And so I've suggested to students, when you've got those 1 hour breaks between classes or a big block of time, actually start using your calendar and blocking off like, 3 hour spot on Monday is going to be to study for subject X or whatever. And use those 1 hour breaks where you kind of like mentally drain, use those to even plan for the next day or something, and not just sit and have coffee every time you have a 1 hour break, because you'll never get those 1 hour breaks back. Or just do mundane stuff that doesn't require any intellectual or critical thinking, and use your big blocks of time to do stuff. And just, again, this is advice that many of the professors, this is what we do. We do things like our laundry and all the mundane stuff during the week at night when we're tired, so that we save the weekends. If we're going to work, we're going to do a big block of 3 or 4 hours on a weekend, rather than using that entire weekend when you've got a big block of time to suddenly run around doing your groceries and your laundry. Right? So save that to do fun things, and or to like say for 4 hours, I'm going to work on the weekend, and you do your mundane grocery shopping, laundry and stuff at night when you're kind of tired anyway, you can't think straight. So just wanted to say that. It was too much to type.
No. It's amazing that we got amazing insight from a professor themselves. And Dr. Daniel, like Valerie mentioned, is also one of the amazing directors here at Lead Org. So you're getting insider's edition. So thank you, Dr. Daniel.
You're welcome.
It was actually a question about a professor's schedule. So it's good that you answered it, but I will just read it again quickly. Do the professors ever come one time they're all on a break, or does it differ? And then there's another question that's, can I get a bachelor's degree from college after 2 years of university?
No, you mean the other way around. You can get a bachelor's degree from university if you go to college and transfer to university. Yes, you can.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but I don't know about going to university for 2 years and then college. And like, I'm not sure about the other way around.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to add, I'm actually getting a degree from a college. I know it wasn't the question, but just letting people know you can get degrees from colleges.
Yeah.
But after the 2 years, you get something called a diploma, and sometimes you can transfer into a degree program with that, which I think is what Dr. Daniel was just saying. Yeah. So for example, at George Brown, I got a diploma in event management for 2 years. I could have had the option to then enter their business degree program as a third year. It's a hospitality and tourism business degree at a college. So you can get degrees there, which is cool. Bridging's awesome.
Thank you, Molly and Dr. Daniel. And for the question with the professors, every professor's schedule differs. That's why you also have different time for the classes. And in university, you have something called office hours, and that's based on the professor's time that they have outside of the lectures and tutorials to, meet with you if you would like. So that's also something to consider. So yeah, every professor has a different schedule. Dr. Daniel can also attest to that.
Yes, an excellent point you just raised before we wrap up. If you're in university, please, professors have office hours, and it literally is to help you, but it's also a chance for you as a student to get to know a professor and a professor to get to know you. Because Olamide and Anu can tell you that, this year or next year, or tonight, what am I saying? Tomorrow is the deadline for medical school applications. So guess what I'm staying up late tonight doing? I'm writing reference letters. And I've been emailed by students that took my course 5 years ago. Oh, I took your course and I got an A+. Can you write me a letter? And I have no idea who that person is. I can't, and I literally had to say to them, I have no idea who you are. I can't write you a letter, right? So you're gonna need reference letters to get into a lot of professional schools. And a professor with any integrity will say no if they don't know you personally. If they say yes and they don't know you personally, they're literally gonna write you a 5-page letter and you will not get into professional school or whatever job you're applying for. So you need to build relationships with professors, and office hours are the best way to do that. Because usually most people don't show up for office hours. So you'll have the undivided attention of the professor to talk to them about the course, and also to just talk to them about their life, and you can tell them about your life, and they can become your mentor.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Daniel. Yes, networking is very, very important. So we'll have the last question, which is a fun one. What is your favorite memory in uni/college? The panelists.
I can go first. For me, even I didn't like my residence building. I would always complain about it, but I did love living on res. I just felt so independent because I don't know, I've never really went away from home a lot, like before going to university. So just getting the experience of living on my own and like being responsible, independent, it was good. And I made a lot of friends in my res. So it was a good time. I definitely say it's my best memory.
Awesome. Thank you, Anu. Any other panelists?
My friends and I, we were up late studying, and one of the girls said, I could really go for a beaver tail. It's like that. They're like funnel cakes. And so at like 11 o'clock at night, we drove to Niagara Falls to get beaver tails. So it's the little things you do with your friends, So finding just like a good group of friends. I know it's not easy to find friends as an adult, but that's, again, where those like clubs and stuff comes in, or even just talking to the girl next to you in class, like you can meet some of your best friends that way.
Completely agree. Yes, I met some of my BFFs as well in uni. Any other panelists?
I can take this one. One of my favorite university memories is like probably so I had a friend of mine that like we both commuted from Mississauga to Toronto, and we became friends, like, you know, because we have very similar backgrounds. We did business school together. And my favorite memory is like, you know, one summer we were co-oping in the same buildings. We kind of had the same route. And every day of the week, we would find like some sort of farmer's market during the summer or something to eat. And we would like try out things. Like by the end of the summer, we probably tried out like 20 things or more, way more than that. Like we went to the mac and cheese festival one year. We like that summer we went to like Poutine Fest. Yeah, it was like delish. Honestly, if I didn't walk that much that summer, I definitely would have gained like some weight. But that's like it's just like a happy thought. Like I have pictures that come up now on Instagram because, you know, Instagram gives you highlights. And one of the things I really like we had like Thai tea. Like it was just a good time. It's just like a positive memory.
Yeah, that's so cute. Thank you for sharing. I think Izinwa, you wanted to answer as well.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I feel like it's very similar to everyone's like experience, just making friends in uni or like friends because like you guys just always seeing each other, always in the same contained, confined space, and getting to know people. Those late nights of like studying to 2 a.m. for no reason and sitting the exam the next day, failing together, just stuff like that. Like just those memories you build are things you kind of look back on because, like I said, like I feel like uni is a time you never kind of get that kind of scenario in life again.
Oh, this is bringing me way back. Thank you everyone for sharing. And Olamide, what's your favorite memory?
Oh my gosh. One night, my friends and I decided to watch a movie in a lecture hall because of the big screen. We weren't allowed to do it, but we did it anyways, and we almost got caught. But thankfully, we finished the movie. So, you know, I always laugh about it now. But yeah, it's my favorite memory in university. It was in the building called MDCL because it closes after a certain time, but we were there before it closed off. So yeah, it was very funny.
Wow, sounds so fun. You have your own like private movie theater in the lecture hall.
Yeah.
Neat. Wow. I would say one of my favorite memories is participating as a Frosh leader in Frosh Week for a couple years in a row. And we basically treated the school as a hotel the whole week. We would just like, you know, our school will rent like TTC buses to bus us between like the party point. So we would, back when the government was a club in Toronto, we would like have a huge Frosh Week there with the other universities. And we had like a boat cruise, and we were all doing the Macarena on the boat cruise with like the city skyline in the background. And I remember one guy, he was so lost, he didn't know how to do the Macarena or what it was. And it was kind of funny that we were just on the boat Macarena. Oh, neat. The boat cruise?
It's so fun. I was at Vic College, so that was really fun.
I was at St. Michael's, so it was right beside Vic.
Oh, yeah.
We had a rivalry.
Sort of rivals, yeah.
Yes.
It is really fun to be a Frosh leader, yeah.
It was fun. Yes, and it's cheaper than a movie theater. Yes, and other favorite memory is getting student discounts. So make sure you get that SPC card if that still exists. Anyone remember the student price card? Yes, 10% off everywhere. Yes. So many free food events too, and discounts to tickets and all that. Amazing. Well, thank you all for sharing your favorite memories. It's always super fun to reminisce about and all the amazing solid friendships that we made. Like I'm still very close friends with my friends I made in university. Even that meeting them was a memory in itself. Over to you, Olamide.
All right, thank you, everyone. So we're going to wrap up for the night. Thank you once again for being here. So if you could scan this, if you have your phone with you, it's a quick 30-second survey to tell us how we did. We are a small nonprofit here in the GTA, and we value every feedback that we get. So please take a second to fill it out because we love to hear how you felt about the event. I would also be sending the chat and the link in the chat as well. So we can leave it on for about 10 seconds. All right, Valerie, you can move on. Thank you.
Okay, and we have some upcoming events at the LEAT org. So this event is actually already full, but we do have an upcoming cohort, so I'm going to talk about it. So at the LEAD organization, we also do programs such as the Career Camp, which is a 4-week intensive program. The fall cohort is happening October 4th to November 1st. We are full now. However, we are going to be facilitating another camp this winter 2022, likely in January. So if you are interested in joining a 4-week program to help you develop your career, you're welcome to inquire within and start the application process with us. In this camp, we're going to take you through the different modules that you need to develop your career. We also created this camp because it's something that we wish we had when we were younger. And I never went to the career center when I was in university. Wish I had, and Molly brought that point afterwards. But if you would like a more in-depth dive in a very intense period of time, this is an amazing camp for you. We're going to go through different modules like resume writing, cover letters, networking, LinkedIn optimization, and so on, because you don't want to wait until your last year of university to decide, okay, what is it that I want to do? You want to start building your network and thinking about what you want to do post-secondary school while you're in school. And that's open to youth 20 to 30. For those who are in high school, we also do a high school program, and we'll have that later on in 2022. And over to you, Lamide, for our social media.
Thank you. So yes, please follow us on our social media accounts. We have an Instagram account, Twitter, and YouTube account as well. On our YouTube account, we have the past recordings of the other workshops that we've ran over the years. So please feel free to subscribe to us and follow us on Twitter and Instagram.